Hey y'all, it's May the 29th, 2015, and I want to tell y'all a story. It's fairly early, it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning, and I want to tell y'all this story this morning. I, Let me start off by saying this. When you step back, if you step back far enough, a lot of people have expressed this and documented this. If you step back far enough, you can see clearly that everything on this earth and more than likely outside of this earth is connected to some degree. Uh, that is to say, uh, that they're all cause and effect situations, all of them. They all affect each other somehow. So when you consider this, if you consider this long enough, you may begin to understand that there is no such thing as coincidence. The word coincidence is actually a fraudulent word, probably. Maybe it even shouldn't exist. Because the idea of a coincidence are two things happening that are related in a curious way. But the thing is, that doesn't happen. Two things don't happen like that. Thousands, millions, billions of things are happening like that. So the idea of a coincidence is kind of laughable. I don't really consider that anymore. That being said, I want to tell you a little story about last night because I've told my brother Andrew Trevino, shout out to El Nino. Um, I told him a number of times, and I'm dead serious, that my life, um, as of recently, the best way to describe it is absolutely surreal. It's all quite fantastical. Sometimes usually I don't mention all the stories that happen to me here on the internet. Um, and basically, every single day is quite interesting. Um, it's as though I'm experiencing a dream. It's either like a dream or it's a complete reoccurring nightmare. It's either one or the other. Might suspect, oh man, maybe he's being bipolar and freaking out. Bipolar tendencies happen to run in his family, as does diabetes. But actually, that's not the case. I mean, I really can't prove it to you, but I gotta say, I stay fairly calm throughout the nightmare slash crazy dream like fantastical things that happen to me. Last night was no exception. Last night I didn't have very much money on me at the time. You have to wait for payday. Um, Sometimes you exceed your budget a little bit. But even with not having very much money, I was inspired for whatever reason to take a walk to the grocery store. That's HEB, Grism, and Tesla, if you're familiar. And so I took a walk to the grocery store, maybe slightly before 8, around 8 o'clock p.m. This is something that I don't normally do. I don't normally take a walk to the grocery store this late. All right, but I take the walk and I go a different way than I usually go. There's many different ways to get there. Took the pretty much the way if you go to the Walgreens on Tesla and then you go down Tesla all the way to the HEB, it's the way that I went. And I picked up a very few amount of items because I didn't have very much money on me. Normally, I wouldn't even go to the store if I only had that much money. I'd just kick it and stay. But anyways, I go. I get dog food a little bit and something. I got this pastry I probably shouldn't have got, but I was like, you know what? Gosh dang it, it's cheap. It is. So I got that. And then I walked back. I walked back, but at that time I took a totally separate way, different way. This way that I took back is a path that I've been down a number of times, but I haven't traveled it lately. I tend not to travel it. Um, you'd have to be familiar with the area, but it's kind of the path where you turn at that Yonkers, you turn a left from off of Tesla, and then you go a couple streets down, you take a right, and that'll take you past Fernandez Elementary. Eventually, you'll get to Bowen's Crossing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's the way that I was going to get back. A way that I hardly ever take. The reason being is that it has some steep hills, pretty steep hills, and when you're walking through, just like last night, at one point you're like, gosh, dang, I should probably have taken a different way because of the steep hills that it has. That's what you always think. Anyways, like I said, there's no coincidence. When I get to about the end of that street that took me past Fernandez, right there at the pool, back in the parking lot of the pool, something was going on that I happened to pass by. Um, a little dog ran out at me. I believe it had a collar. Um, and it started to bark at me. It tried to bark at me from across the street like little dogs do. I'm very used to this, so I just see it. I'm like, it's a little dog. I hope it doesn't try to cross the street. And of course it does. It does try to cross the street to come closer to me to bark at me. In the process of doing that, there is a car that almost kind of runs it over. And it's kind of one of those where, like, you see, you're about to brace for it, like, oh shit, I think this dog's about to get ran over. But it doesn't. Just about this time is when it dawns on me that there's a lady's voice in the background, and she's kind of wailing. I mean, she is in distress. I just didn't piece it together at first, but it's because of this dog. She's over in the parking lot, losing her mind looking at this dog, almost get ran over. So you could assume that that would be her dog, uh, and it surely was. She was losing her mind. And being the dog owner that I am, or whatever, it's not owner, but the dog partner that I know exactly her feeling. She doesn't know this yet, but I know exactly what she's feeling like. This dog's about to get hurt. You can't save it because this dog's not going to run to you because it wants to be out and play. It doesn't realize the danger that it's in. So you're freaking out and you can't get this dog to come to you for the life of you. I've been there. I would have to say at least a handful of times. So, this dog's all barking at me and stuff, but I'm like, I gotta try and see if I could help this lady. So, I'm kind of like moving the dog backwards, like it's reacting to me. So I'm trying to move the dog backwards to see if it'll run to her. Doesn't run to her. It's running all over the place. But for all intents and purposes, could get ran over right then. Um, and so you immediately get uh, the feeling that um, she's at her wit's end. This lady, she's at the end of her rope. She really does not know what to do. She's freaking out. So I'm like, all right, I've been there before. So what? I was like, man, here's what I do with my dogs. Sometimes when they're not coming to me, is I'll just give up and I'll just sit down on the ground. Maybe they'll eventually come to me. And you could tell this lady was just at her wit's end. I mean, like she hit the ground like that. She was like immediately on the ground. I was like, all right, so I sit down. The dog starts to come closer and stuff, but it's still running around. You still can't grab it. She's still freaking out. I'm talking about bawling. And then I realized that in the grocery bag that I left from across the street is some dog food. And I tell her, hey, listen, I just happen to have dog food in my bag over there across the street. Probably a good idea that we break that out. She thought about it for a second. She's like, all right, go get the dog food. And so I ran and I got the dog food, came back, sat back down next to her. She still did not get up. Put some dog food on the, pavement. Dog came over immediately, began to eat it. She slowly puts her hand on the dog and then proceeds to grabbing the dog and picking the dog up. And you could see specifically the feeling rush over her, very visible in her face, that she was having a moment where you have 100 problems and they all seem hopeless. They all seem terribly hopeless until you can put your hand on and resolve one of those problems, and then all those problems become possible to resolve. That was the feeling that rushed over, and I could tell just by looking at her. She got up. She explained that she was having problems. She needed to go into a treatment facility. But before that, she needed to find a nice, loving home for her dog, who you could tell she cared the world about. She then asked me for a hug to finish this up. She asked me for a hug before we left. I hugged her, and I really couldn't think of anything else to say except it's gonna be all right. I realized later, that I probably told her this because that's what I would like somebody to tell me from time to time. Anyways, we parted ways. She offered me a ride. I didn't take it, but I don't usually take rides. But like I'm saying, uh, yeah, a coincidence. Was it a coincidence I had a dog food in the bag? Was it a coincidence that I went a complete different way when I shouldn't be there and all that sort of stuff? Anyways, I don't believe in coincidences. It's May the 29th, 2015.